What if I told you that the most mind-bending science fiction stories aren't hiding behind paywalls or streaming subscriptions, but right out there, free to watch tonight? These aren't blockbusters, but lost visions of the future that shaped everything to come. Forgotten films buried by studios ignored by history, but alive online. 10 retro sci-fi masterpieces you can stream tonight before they vanish again. Number 10. It Came from Outer Space, 1953. Back when science fiction was young and paranoia was king, It Came from Outer Space hit theaters like a glowing meteor. Critics called it daring and poetic. Others said it was propaganda in disguise. Either way, audiences were hypnotized. Set in a small desert town, it begins with a mysterious object crashing from the sky. A writer and his girlfriend investigate only to discover alien beings who have taken human form. The twist was revolutionary. The aliens weren't invaders. They were peaceful explorers stranded on Earth, terrified of humans. In the middle of the Cold War, that message was dangerous. Universal Studios nearly panicked. Some executives wanted to rewrite the ending to make the aliens hostile. But director Jack Arnold fought to keep its empathy intact. Audiences expecting monsters got philosophy instead. For many, it was the first film to ask whether fear itself was the real villain. Behind the scenes, the film used experimental 3D technology years before it became mainstream. Viewers gasped as comets streaked toward them. Critics called it the thinking man's monster movie, but government officials weren't so thrilled. Rumors swirled that it was banned on certain military bases for promoting distrust in authority. Decades later, it became a cult classic, cherished by those who saw beneath its pulp exterior. It's free to stream today on several public domain archives in crisp, black and white, restored glory. Watching it now feels like hearing a whisper from the past, reminding us that sometimes the unknown isn't to be feared, but understood. Number 9. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, 1961. Imagine a world where nuclear testing tilts the planet off its axis. That was the chilling premise behind The Day the Earth Caught Fire, a British film that mixed newsroom realism with apocalyptic dread. Critics praised it as the smartest disaster movie of its time, yet it vanished for decades due to licensing chaos. The story unfolds through the eyes of weary London journalists. Strange weather patterns appear, snow in the tropics, heat waves in winter. Slowly, they realize atomic experiments by both superpowers have thrown Earth toward the sun. Humanity's extinction is no longer a question, but a countdown. The film's honesty unnerved censors. The British Board of Film Classification demanded cuts to scenes showing government incompetence. The United States gave it a limited release, labeling it anti-nuclear propaganda. Even its studio downplayed promotion, fearing Cold War backlash. Behind the scenes, director Val Guest insisted on realism. He shot with actual London news reporters as extras. The sweat, the chaos, the despair, all felt documentary real. During production, the cast nearly collapsed, filming in suffocating heat to simulate global warming long before the phrase existed. It faded into obscurity for years, until film preservationists restored it in the 2000s. Now it's free to stream on archive platforms like the Internet Archive and public domain movie channels. Watching it today feels prophetic. What was once science fiction now echoes the climate crisis headlines of our time. The Day the Earth Caught Fire didn't just predict apocalypse, it predicted us. Number 8. Planet of the Vampires, 1965. Long before Alien terrified audiences, in 1979, there was Planet of the Vampires. Directed by the legendary Italian filmmaker Mario Bava, this was science fiction, dripping with dread atmosphere and hallucinatory color. The film opens with 2 starships landing on a mysterious planet after receiving a distress signal. Once there, the crews are attacked by unseen forces that possess their bodies, turning them against one another. It was gothic horror in outer space. Critics at first laughed at its melodrama, but filmmakers later called it visionary. Censors in the United States and the United Kingdom hesitated to release it, fearing its grim tone and haunting visuals would terrify younger audiences. It was banned on some regional networks for being too disturbing. Behind the scenes, Bava built alien worlds entirely on sound stages, using colored lights, mirrors, and smoke instead of big budgets. The results were breathtaking. American studios tried to bury it under cheap double-bill releases, but future directors didn't forget. Ridley Scott studied it while designing Alien's derelict spaceship scenes. John Carpenter cited it as an influence on The Thing. For years, it existed only in grainy VHS tapes, traded by collectors, until digital restorations revived it. Today it's free on public domain streaming services, and looks astonishingly modern. Its message endures. That exploration can become infection. That curiosity can lead to annihilation. Watching Planet of the Vampires tonight feels like discovering the missing DNA of every sci-fi nightmare since. Proof that terror doesn't need explosions, just silent stars and something whispering your name from the dark. Number 7. The Incredible Shrinking Man, 1957. When The Incredible Shrinking Man hit theaters, audiences expected cheap thrills. What they got instead was an existential crisis wrapped in atomic-era spectacle. Directed by Jack Arnold, the same genius behind it came from outer space. It was both terrifying and deeply human. The story followed Scott Carey, an ordinary man exposed to a strange, radioactive mist while boating. Weeks later, he begins to shrink inch by inch until he becomes smaller than a cat. What starts as wonder soon turns into cosmic horror. His home becomes a wasteland. A basement becomes an endless desert. A spider becomes a god. At first, Universal Pictures called it too dark for mainstream audiences. Some countries in Europe restricted screenings, fearing its bleak ending would depress post-war viewers. In America, religious groups complained about its conclusion, which portrayed a man facing the infinite without divine salvation. Behind the scenes, the film was a technical miracle. Arnold used forced perspective and giant props to make Scott's shrinking world believable. Actor Grant Williams spent days crawling through enormous sets while being sprayed with water and dust. The spider fight was real. The production used an actual tarantula. It terrified audiences and critics alike. Despite early controversy, the film became a quiet triumph. Scientists praised its attention to detail. Philosophers admired its metaphysical ending, and decades later, it was added to the National Film Registry for cultural significance. You can stream it now free on platforms like Tubi and the Internet Archive. Watching it today feels different. It's not just about size, but insignificance, about how small humanity becomes when it loses control. The Incredible Shrinking Man isn't just science fiction, it's a prayer whispered into the void. Number 6. The Andromeda Strain, 1971. Long before pandemic, thrillers dominated modern streaming. The Andromeda Strain turned fear into science. Adapted from Michael Crichton's novel, it told of a deadly organism from space brought back to Earth on a crashed satellite. The movie was so realistic, NASA reportedly studied it as a training reference. It opens with eerie silence. A small New Mexico town is wiped out overnight. Scientists rush to a secret underground facility codenamed Wildfire to contain the unknown pathogen. The suspense grows not through monsters, but through procedure. Machines hum. Suits hiss. Humanity's survival depends on logic, not luck. When it premiered, censors in Japan and parts of Europe balked. Officials feared it exposed government incompetence in dealing with biological weapons. Some theaters banned it during the height of Cold War paranoia. Even its producer, Universal, received anonymous warnings calling it unpatriotic. Behind the scenes, director Robert Wise insisted on total authenticity. He built massive, sterile sets modeled after real NASA blueprints. The cast rehearsed with scientists. Actors fainted inside their heavy suits. Every light flicker was choreographed to simulate a true lab environment. Though initially slow at the box office, The Andromeda Strain became a cult hit on television. Critics now see it as one of the first realistic portrayals of containment failure, a nightmare decades ahead of its time. You can watch it free on certain archive and ad-supported platforms tonight. It feels eerily relevant again. A film that asks whether humanity can control what it doesn't yet understand. Cold, clinical, terrifyingly prophetic. The Andromeda Strain didn't just predict disaster, it documented it before it happened. Number 5. The Quiet Earth, 1985. A man wakes up to find the entire planet empty. Cars sit abandoned. Radios hiss static. No birds, no voices, no movement. That opening image from The Quiet Earth still haunts anyone who's ever seen it. This New Zealand masterpiece became one of the strangest and most overlooked sci-fi gems of the 80s. It follows Zach Hobson, a scientist who wakes one morning to discover humanity has vanished. He soon finds two other survivors, and together they piece together what went wrong. A scientific experiment designed to harness global energy may have erased reality itself. When it premiered in America, it was buried by distributors. Studios didn't know how to sell it. Too smart for horror, too quiet for mainstream sci-fi. But audiences in Europe adored it. Censors in parts of Asia banned it for alleged religious themes. In South Africa, officials cut entire sections claiming it criticized authority. Behind the scenes, the production nearly collapsed. Filming in empty city streets at dawn required government cooperation and police shutdowns. The haunting final scene on a desolate beach was filmed just minutes before a real storm hit. Director Jeff Murphy called it divine timing. The Quiet Earth became a symbol of loneliness and human fragility. Scientists later praised its depiction of isolation and existential collapse. Decades later, it inspired works like 28 Days Later and I Am Legend. You can stream it now free on Pluto TV and the Internet Archive. Watch it late at night when the streets are empty and the lights hum faintly. Because The Quiet Earth isn't just about apocalypse, it's about waking up one day to realize you're utterly alone in the universe. Number 4. This Island Earth, 1955. When Universal Pictures released This Island Earth, they expected another colorful monster spectacle. What they got instead was a haunting meditation on war and survival, disguised as a pulp adventure. Critics were divided. Some called it genius, others called it madness. Audiences simply stared in awe at its scope. The story begins with a scientist who receives mysterious parts in the mail, allowing him to build an Interociter, a strange alien machine. Soon, he's recruited by beings from the planet Metaluna, who seek humanity's help to save their dying world. But here's the twist. Their war is already lost. Their desperation is contagious, and Earth may be next. For 1955, its visuals were astonishing. The glowing reactors, the teleportation beams, the towering mutants, all built without computers. But under the surface, the film was a quiet cry against nuclear arrogance. That message scared people. In parts of Eastern Europe and Latin America, it was banned for depicting science as dangerous. Behind the scenes, chaos ruled. The makeup department nearly mutinied when Universal demanded reshoots to add the mutant creature. Director Joseph Newman walked off set more than once. Producer William Allen clashed with executives who wanted explosions instead of philosophy. Despite the turmoil, the film became a sleeper hit, inspiring future directors like Spielberg and Cameron. It faded for years into low-quality television reruns, but has since been restored in high definition. And yes, it's free tonight on multiple archive platforms. Watching it now feels strange. What once looked campy now feels tragic. This island Earth predicted that even the most intelligent civilizations could destroy themselves in the pursuit of power. It wasn't fantasy, it was a mirror. And maybe that's why it still feels so alive. Number 3. Phase 4, 1974. Few films are as hypnotic as Phase 4, directed by Saul Bass. The legendary designer behind Hitchcock's title sequences, this was his only feature film, and it nearly ruined his career. The studio didn't understand it. Audiences didn't either. But for those who did, it became a masterpiece of cosmic horror. The premise is deceptively simple. A cosmic event alters the intelligence of ants across the desert. They begin organizing building structures and communicating on a mathematical level beyond human understanding. Scientists set up a base to study them. But the ants are studying back. Censors in Europe and Australia found it disturbing. Several nations banned it from television, claiming it glorified nature over mankind. Some audiences even believed it was a coded environmental manifesto. Paramount cut its original surreal ending, which depicted the merging of human and insect consciousness. That footage vanished for decades. Behind the scenes, the production was a nightmare. Saul Bass obsessed over every frame, designing it like a moving piece of art. He used microscopic lenses and real insects instead of effects. Cinematographer Dick Bush filmed macro sequences so detailed that critics thought they were animated. The result was both terrifying and beautiful. Phase 4 bombed on release. Paramount shelved it almost immediately. Yet filmmakers from Kubrick to Villeneuve later cited it as inspiration. In the 2000s, Bass's lost ending resurfaced in a vault, restoring his vision at last. You can stream the restored cut free on public domain movie channels tonight. It's slow, haunting, and unforgettable. Phase 4 doesn't just show the rise of another species, it shows the fall of our own arrogance. A reminder that intelligence may not belong to us forever. Number 2. Seconds, 1966. Imagine dying only to be reborn in another man's body. That's the nightmare at the core of Seconds, directed by John Frankenheimer. It was psychological science fiction decades before the term existed, and it terrified audiences into silence. The film follows Arthur, Hamilton, a banker who secretly undergoes an experimental procedure to fake his death and assume a new identity as a younger artist. But the new life comes at a cost. His memories don't fade. His guilt doesn't die. And the company that gave him this rebirth may be far darker than he realizes. When Seconds premiered, it shocked everyone. Critics called it grotesque and brilliant, but audiences walked out in discomfort. The Catholic Church condemned it. In Spain and Portugal, it was banned outright for blasphemy. Even in the United States, the studio buried it after poor test screenings. Behind the scenes, Frankenheimer fought constant interference. He cast Rock Hudson against type, forcing him into one of the most tragic roles of his career. Hudson later called it his favorite performance, though it nearly ended his Hollywood reputation. The cinematography used distorted lenses and handheld shots, decades ahead of their time. Over the years, Seconds gained recognition as a lost masterpiece. Modern critics hail it as one of the greatest explorations of identity ever filmed. You can stream it free tonight through archive-based channels and classic film platforms. Watching it feels like staring into a nightmare of vanity and control. Seconds predicted a future where identity could be purchased and personality could be erased. A world we are only now beginning to understand. Number 1. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. There has never been another science fiction film quite like The Man Who Fell to Earth. When Nicholas Roeg cast David Bowie as the alien who crashes to Earth in search of water for his dying planet, he didn't just make a movie. He made a prophecy about fame, greed, and the loneliness of genius. The film followed Thomas Jerome Newton, a visitor who uses advanced technology to become a billionaire in hopes of funding his mission home. But instead of salvation, he finds corruption. Human desire consumes him. Wealth turns to addiction. Love turns to emptiness. By the time he realizes what Earth has done to him, it's too late. When it premiered, censors were horrified. Ireland and Spain banned it for moral reasons. Singapore and South Korea blocked it for what officials called dangerous philosophy. Even in the United States, the studio slashed marketing fearing public backlash. Critics were divided between awe and confusion. Bowie himself said the role nearly destroyed him. Behind the scenes, chaos reigned. Bowie lived like his character, sleeping little and wandering, set in isolation. Director Nicholas Roeg filmed with non-linear structure, baffling studio heads. The editing process dragged for months. The studio nearly refused to release it until cult audiences began demanding it. Over time, it became a symbol of alienation in modern society. Artists, musicians, and filmmakers called it a sacred text. Its influence echoed through Blade Runner and Under the Skin. Decades later, it was restored to its original cut and released freely across film archives and digital libraries. You can watch it tonight, free through legitimate public domain sites and classic streaming channels. It's not entertainment, it's revelation. The Man Who Fell to Earth isn't about aliens, it's about us. How even the purest visitor can be destroyed by the gravity of human greed. These forgotten visions, once hidden by time and fear, are yours to rediscover tonight. Each film is a doorway to the future, imagined by dreamers the world tried to silence. So grab your headphones, dim the lights, and see what the studio's buried. Which of these hidden gems will you watch first? Like, share, and keep curiosity alive.